Baruch
Baruch
Adonai Eloheinu melech
Haolam
Asher
asher
kishanu mitzvotav
so created Torah. Praise to you, Lord of God, ruler of the universe, who has made us holy with your commandments and command us to busy ourselves with the words of Torah. So, a quick recap of where we've been over the last few months with chapter 4. We started with Ben Zoma, who asked who is wise, one who learns from everyone, who is mighty, one who subdues their evil inclination, who is rich, one who's happy with what they have, who is honored, one who honors others. Then we went to Ben Azai, who said that whether it's a, quote, minor commandment or a major commandment, you should make sure to do it if it's the right thing to do, and stay away from things that are the wrong thing to do. And one good deed leads to another, one commandment leads to another, and one transgression leads to another. Then we had Ben Azai, who also said, don't despise anybody and don't underrate the importance of anything, because everybody has their time and everything has its place. And that brings us to the next text, which is our one for today. It's in this version of Pirkei Avot, it is chapter 4, number 4. In other versions, it's number 4 followed by number 5. So, Naomi, would you read our text, please?
Rabbi Levitas, a man of Yavne, said, "Be of exceeding humble spirit, for a mortal's hope is but the worm, that is, the grave." Rabbi Yohanan ben Beroka said, "Whoever profanes the name of heaven in secret shall be punished in public. Unwittingly or wittingly is all one in profaning the name of God."
Okay, and then our 2 biographies, please.
Rabbi Levitas lived in Yavne in the 100 CE and was a contemporary of Rabban Gamliel II. He does not appear again in the Talmud, but is quoted 3 times in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, 23:11, 52:5, and 54:2. This seems to indicate that the compiler of Pirkei Avot was more concerned with the importance of saying than of the sayer. We also know that rabbis who lived in Yavne were modest and not snobbish. Okay. Biography. Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka was a disciple of Rabbi Joshua ben Hachaniah, who was influenced heavily by Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. He was a contemporary of Rabbi Akiba, and he may have survived the Bar Kokhba revolt, 135 CE. He was a colleague of Eliezer ben Hizma and was an authority on civil law. His decisions are found throughout the Talmud, but not frequently. When it comes to statements about women, his thoughts are usually the minority opinion. How are these sayings relevant to our lives today?
Thank you. All right, back to our sayings.
So could you explain something? I'm not sure. Be of exceeding humble spirit, for a mortal human being's hope is but just for the grave, just for death.
Yeah. So this would be saying, like, don't be so proud of yourself. Don't be so like overly arrogant about yourself, because
You're gonna
like
die.
no matter how great you are,
Yeah.
you're going to die just like everybody else.
Okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So is this a short form of Ecclesiastes?
Basically. If you don't have time to read all 12 chapters, here's a one-sentence cliff notes of it.
I've been playing a lot of duplicate bridge the last few months. And if I've learned nothing else, I've certainly learned to be humble, because just when you think you know how to play this game, you do something stupid. Or my other experience has been, I'll think that I've done well and then realize that all the other partnerships in the room have played it at a much higher level than I did. So I'll get all excited because I played something at, 3-note trump, and they all played it at 6-note. So it's, it can, and it's against the rules to, because I violated it today. I played something today and I did get all excited because I made it. And I went, ah! You're not supposed to show excitement. So, but the opponents forgave me. So.
So if one profanes the name of heaven in secret, they'll get punished in public because somehow or another it will be found out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Could it also be suggesting that it's impossible to run from even secret sins or violations, just issues like this, ethical whatever's, because of its effect, like for example, on like the consciousness and guilt and things like that? Even in a public place, it will follow you around, so to speak.
Quite possibly. Yes, that could definitely be one way that this could play out. That even if you do something, where you think you've done it in secret, your guilt may cause it
Follow you around.
may follow you until it comes out in some way.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about how to read it.
Mhm.
You
Thank
can
you.
look at the Los Angeles City Council. And that's exactly what happened. A couple of people thought they were talking in secret, in private. They were recorded, and now the city council president had to resign because they really said some terrible things. And the Hispanic community is up in arms about these Hispanic council people who spoke very negatively.
Yeah.
And the recording was a year old. So it was, I mean, it's a good example of it. It'll eventually catch up with you because it wasn't last week. The recording was so old.
You're absolutely right. You never know. You never know. It always comes to the surface somewhere, somehow.
In the first one, does it really imply that you, I don't know if you can hear me, I'm getting it unstable. Okay. It implies that you pretty much have to stay an equal emotional slant, or plane, that you're not allowed to have high emotions or anger or low, just be humble, because, I mean, it doesn't allow you to just be human, even though I understand the point of it, but exceedingly humble all the time is pretty due, and you really limit yourself to basically a lot of guilt and questioning yourself all the time. So I don't know if that's fair.
Yeah, was Rabbi Levitus, was he emo, I guess, of his time? That's-
I didn't hear.
Oh, it's like in the 90s and 2000s, like it was teenagers that were, all woe is me, like just always, because we're all gonna die type Nietzsche, type of.
Okay.
So what does this profaning the name of heaven in secret, what does that look like? Or well, start with what does profaning the name of heaven look like?
Normally, profaning the name of heaven or God, if you will, is laying blame on heaven or the Lord if something goes wrong in your life or you're not happy about the way something turns out.
All right. Yes. Yes, and what else could it be? So we've got a comment in the chat to dishonor the humanity of our fellows.
Yeah, it's critical of God, and the secret to me means that even if you're quiet about it, she can hear you. So you're never free of being observed in that respect.
I'm getting another comment in the chat about disrespecting God's name or heaven's dominion.
Could it be saying that is this unwittingly or wittingly, it is all one in profaning the name of God? And it talks about that in the line right before. Could it be saying that regardless of whether or not the violation is in public or private, if it's Chilul Hashem, if it is disgracing God's name in one place, it will still be in another. Like it doesn't change the location where it would happen. It still is the same weight. Sort of, is that what it's saying?
Yes, exactly. Unwittingly or wittingly, whether you profane God's name, whatever exactly that means, whether you do it in secret or you do it in public, like you've still blemished the name of God in some way.
Yeah, I would think that would be any kind of blasphemy or something like that. Or at least if it's connected to the line above us, especially, it might be something along those lines.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What does profanity mean in terms of God and heaven? For example, if something is going wrong and you know that God has the power to prevent it from going wrong, but doesn't, and you blame God for having it go wrong, is that profanity?
So you're saying, Herb, that if something went wrong and you knew God couldn't have prevented it, but you blamed God anyway, is that profaning God's name? Is that your question?
Well, a lot of people blame God for what happened in the Holocaust, but is that profanity and blaming God for that? Or how do you define profanity?
I guess that is the question here.
David, can I ask for a clarification? Because sometimes when you hide the ball, it's useful. Sometimes I'm just lost. Like here, I see the word Hilul Hashem, so that's profanation. I don't want to get hung up on our notion of profanity, just meaning a verbal form that is not approved of. Although I'm not saying that's nothing, but it's a little different here. So I usually see that word, like in the prayers, as contrasted with sanctification of the name, which is, and that's often in the context of martyrs. So these are heavy. I think of these as heavy terms. Maybe I'm wrong, but one of them is like making light of it, and so the stakes can be very high here. And I'm wondering, really, because I have no idea, what is the, and I assume there is a fairly clear, I could be wrong about that, traditional idea, at least in some part of the Jewish culture, of what he's talking about here. Because the idea that it'll catch up with you, that's a different thing. That's a feeling that's very different from Kohelet, from Ecclesiastes, that it may or may not catch up with you. But that's a different question from what is the content of the profanation. And that's my
So I think what people have said is a lot of different ways of looking at the same term. It's kind of like a room in the round with windows from different angles, and you can see different things when you look into it from a different angle. I'll present a few more angles that look into the same term of Chilul Hashem. One is in Leviticus in chapter 19, which is the Holiness Code. It says in verse 12, you shall not swear falsely by my name, profaning the name of the Lord your God, I am the Lord. So there, it seems to say that profaning means making it more ordinary. Like in Havdalah, when we say, Mavdil ben Kodesh lechol, we're separating between the holy and the ordinary, that which is not distinct. So by taking God's name in vain, we are not treating it as special, and therefore we're saying that it is a more ordinary thing. And so in the context of this text from Pirkei Avot, when you don't see, when you treat God's name as ordinary, then you've made it, whether you do that in public or in private, then that comes out in some way, possibly because the things that we do in private, we become accustomed to, and then we're more likely to do them in public. That's one angle on the question of Chilul Hashem. Another angle is that the term Chilul Hashem is used as a phrase in the conversation of people who speak English as a desecration of God's name, as opposed to a profanation of God's name. And so just like a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name, on the one hand is a term associated with people who are martyred because they're Jewish. It can also be used in slightly less heavy contexts as saying, like, when somebody, like if I were to help somebody across the street who needed some assistance and I was wearing a kippah, not under a baseball cap, and so it's obvious that I was Jewish, then somebody else could say, look at that Jew doing something nice, and that would be considered a Kiddush Hashem. I am making God's name holier by bringing honor to God's name, basically. Whereas if I drop a piece of litter on a main street, again, wearing the kippah, and not under a baseball cap, then somebody could say, there's that Jew littering. And that would be, quote, a chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name.
What if you're not wearing the kippah?
If I'm not wearing the kippah, then it depends if somebody knows that I'm Jewish or not. Then I've become anonymous and whatnot. But then this text from Pirkei Avot kicks in. Because if I am doing the wrong thing in secret by not showing that I'm Jewish, then I'm more likely to do it because that is my habit when I am wearing something that makes me more identifiably Jewish, or around people who know that I'm Jewish, like non-Jewish friends, or that sort of thing.
So is this a question of appearances, or the good deed's a good deed, or doing something? So whether you have on a kippah or a baseball cap, but if you misbehave, you're still you're misbehaving in secret if you do with a baseball cap.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, looking at it from that angle, I wear a baseball cap. No one knows I'm a Jew, but still, you're still misbehaving.
And that's what this thing says. It says even if you're doing it in secret, you shall be punished.
Precisely, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But my point is, this concept of you're putting the element of appearance as being able to accomplish this Baruch Hashem. So that seems a little bit distorted to me, my own personal perspective. If you're doing something that's worth doing and you're helping your fellow man with something, what difference does it make what apparel do you have? Except you're projecting an image to someone else. And
right.
Does it make any difference if you're Jew or not and you're behaving well?
So think of it this way. Think of it this way. If I have a friend who just moved to Chicago, and I found out that he came to Chicago because he is working for the Consul General of Canada. And he's here to try to convince companies to open up shop in Canada. That's his that's what he's doing at the consulate. So when he goes to talk to a company, he is going on behalf of the government of Canada. So whatever he does reflects on Canada for people who know that he is a representative of Canada. When he's out in the neighborhood amongst a whole bunch of people who have no idea who he is or what he does, he's not reflecting on Canada. He should still do the right thing because it's the right thing. But it does not desecrate or profane the name of Canada when he doesn't. We are ambassadors of God.
So, I mean, so you're saying, but then you're just saying, if I read it that way, then I'm just trying to stimulate some thought. But this is a good example, but still. So you're telling me if I do it in secret, here it says if you do it in secret, it'll still come out in public. So if I'm a Canadian and I'm misbehaving in secret, it's still going to come out one way or another. And you were saying that maybe that'll make it easier for him to misbehave when he's wearing his Canadian pin as some sort of diplomat. I mean, I can see your point, but I'm just taking the opposite because it works sometimes for me, and it contradicts the whole concept as well for me. If you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and whether you have your kippah on or not, depending, or you have a baseball cap instead of it, are you not doing something to honor or God because you're behaving as you should? And this is very simplistic, but if you're doing something that's when you're being nice to your fellow man, and you're being humble in spirit, and you're treating your fellow man with respect. So that what's the essence? What's the importance? What's the essential importance of one mode of behavior and other then?
But Rabbi Yochanan is talking about doing something wrong. There's nothing here about doing what is right. Whoever profanes the name of God in secret shall be punished in public, unwittingly or wittingly. It is all one of profaning the name of God. I think what he's talking about, for example, is if you embezzle money from your company secretly, eventually you're going to be punished in public. I think this is the
right
thing he's talking about.
Right, but then we're
But
mentioning.
you're turning around looking at doing good things. Rabbi Yochanan is only talking about doing bad things here.
Okay, but David was mentioning doing good things to reflect. So that's why I agree with what you're saying. But I'm saying you're talking about negative things. Yeah, okay. I could agree with that. I don't want to belabor it and monopolize the conversation. So I expressed my question, so I don't want to monopolize the whole evening.
Marilyn's had her hand up for a long time.
Mhm.
Hey, thank you. I didn't want to interrupt anybody. I go away for Passover. I go to the Grand Geneva Resort in Wisconsin, and so everybody knows it's a Jewish group. And there's just a few people that are very rude to the wait staff. So that's a Hillel Hashem. And I did something that I thought was honoring God's name. There was a woman, a guest of the hotel who was not part of our group, and she schleps her suitcase all the way upstairs to her room, and then her key card doesn't work. And she says, "Oh, I can't take this back to the front desk, it's so heavy." So I said, "You can use the phone in my room and call the front desk and tell them." And so she said, "Can you call them for me?" I said, "No, I can't. It's Passover. It's a religious holiday, but you're welcome to use my phone." So I thought that reflected well on Jewish people.
An excellent example in both directions.
David, are you suggesting at all, am I misinterpreting this, just getting confused, that if you cover your kippah with a cap, baseball cap or golf cap, whatever, that is a form of desecration of God?
No.
No. Because I know many very devout Jews who purposely cover the kippah for protection. And they wear a golf cap or baseball cap because they've been attacked anti-Semitically. And to protect them going to shul, they cover their kippah, not out of embarrassment for being Jewish, but of concern that they can be identified and then hurt for being Jewish.
I think he was trying to say that they're not overtly, doing something as, as a Jew. So like this would be going for if they're doing it in secret. So in the first part of Rabbi Yochanan's saying if they're doing it in secret, so they're not doing it as openly Jewish. But once again, going back with what Charles was saying, and actually what we were talking about at the very beginning with the LA mayors, that even if you're doing it in secret, even if you have a cap on, not overtly doing it in God's name, you're still doing it and it'll come back and bite you. I think that's where everything was, culminating.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the first part of this text again. Be of exceeding humble spirit, for mortal's hope is but the grave, basically. So, practically speaking, like what is the nugget of good advice here? And how do we implement it? Because if this was something that if this was something that had no worth to it, then somewhere along the way, we probably would have dropped in the last 1800 years.
Very simplistic. It just says be a mensch. I mean, you're going to die anyway, but be a mensch while you're here.
Refers to pride more than anything else. If you take pride in what you've done, and I guess it's nothing wrong with taking pride in what you've done, provided you don't go overboard with it. Be that you've done something that it worked well, you can be very happy you won the Nobel Prize. Once you've won the Nobel Prize, don't keep throwing it up to everybody. Just go ahead and do what you were doing before.
We're all eventually the same. You know, no one's above death. Be you Jeffrey Bezos or, you know, Joe Blow on the street. We're all eventually the same. So don't think that you're better than somebody else is what I take from it.
Well, there are some people in our synagogue who are really so brilliant, but they don't walk around advertising it. I found out something about a couple of people, and I thought they are two of the most humble people I know, and they do not do what David was talking about, you know, pretend like they're so much smarter than all the rest of us. Or like my friend who's extremely wealthy. For years, I never knew that because she didn't tell anybody, and she didn't dress, act, drive cars or anything, or live places that looked like it. So.
But how does this relate to quelling over your kids, for example? If they do something great, can you be overly proud of them, or
that's a good
not be
question.
overly proud of them with
Great
respect to what
question.
Rabbi Levitas is saying?
Yeah, David, how do you answer that one? That's good.
So I think when it's about parenting, you want your kid or kids to feel like you're proud of them, but you don't want them to get an overly big head, because that's not going to serve them well either. Like, they should know that they did a good job, and they should learn to feel good about themselves. And they shouldn't put other people down because they did well. And they shouldn't go around with an overly inflated ego. Someone's going to pop that ego eventually, and it's going to be painful. So like, you want them to accomplish the right balancing act. There's a Hasidic saying, I think Reb Simcha Bunim of Pirket, something like that, said that people should go around with two sayings in their pockets, and they should pull them out as necessary. One is, I am nothing but dust and ashes. And the other is, for my sake, the world was created. And so when you are out of balance, one side or the other, you pull out the piece of paper that you need to get you back into proper balance. Now, whether Reb Simcha Bunim would agree with Rabbi Levitas, I'm not sure. But that is another piece of Jewish tradition on this matter of how proud one ought to be.
I keep thinking, when I hear that, I keep thinking of the fact that, yes, the world was created for us. But don't forget, we were created to worship God. So isn't God being over prideful in his own way?
If you take that interpretation of why we were created. The Torah doesn't actually say why God created humanity. So, another question. These sayings could have been put in any order in chapter 4 or anywhere else in Pirkei Avot. Why would they have been grouped together?
One kind of punctuates the other. I think the first one is much broader in scope, and the second one is more definitive with a. I mean, just going to the grave is not exactly being punished for something you did bad. It happens, we're all going to wind up there. So, so I see the first one as kind of a broad expectation, and the second one puts some parameters on it to punctuate it.
Conversely, I could see it as the first one being you're not better than other people, and the second one saying you're not better than God type thing, like where it keeps you at those two levels, and then each one giving, I don't know, that I could see that being why they're grouped.
I would think if you're running around profaning the name of God, you're not going to be humble in spirit. And, I think it's, has been said, it's an indicator. The second one is don't act this way in part to fulfill the first one.
So good. So could not being humble be considered profaning the name of the Holy One?
I think it depends how far you take it. There's a midrash, a story about a story from the Tower of Babel that in the text it says that the reason they built the Tower of Babel was because they said, come, let us build us a city and a tower with its top in the sky to make a name for ourselves, else we shall be scattered all over the world. And so that's what the text says, but the writers of Midrash felt like that wasn't quite enough of a reason for God to stop the building project by giving them all different languages in this story. And so there are midrashim that say that their goal was to like reach up to the heavens and wage war on God or overthrow God and become so not humble that they overthrew God. Incidentally, as Barry reminded me, this is from this week's Parsha that we're going to be reading in a few days from Parshat Noach. So I think you can probably, there's probably a lot of latitude, no pun intended, for where you can be not exceedingly humble before you reach the level of profaning the name of God merely because you are not humble. Along the way, if you are not humble enough, you may find other ways of profaning the name of God.
David, I'm thinking that I guess I'm trying to get this straight in my head, but when God, you know, since we're just finished Bereshit, so God created the world, and He created us, and in that, we were supposed to take care of the earth. So it's kind of like a partnership, but we had certain rules that we had to follow. And if we didn't follow the rules, you know, which we didn't right away, because we're stiff-necked and whatever else. So I see, this partnership, kind of not, not exactly working. At least not, not in a way that God would have liked.
Entirely possible. I think it's a work in progress. God kind of tried to start over with the story of Noah, with the flood in this coming week's Parsha, but didn't give up entirely on humanity because a couple people were saved in the story. So all we can do is our best to try to live as partners with God. And on that note, I'm going to end the recording.